everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Maine Castillo. I'm Town Hall's program manager. On behalf of Town Hall Seattle and our friends at Estelida's Library, it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's live stream presentation with Marlon Peterson and Darnell Moore as a part of our Arts and Culture series. As we get underway, I would like to acknowledge that our institution stands on the unceded traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, particularly the Duwamish. We thank them for our continued use of the natural resources of their ancestral homeland. Thank you all for tuning in. Town Hall is proud to be a community-focused organization and a place where we can share and sustain ideas and creativity, even if it means we can't gather in person. I'd like to thank Marlon and Darnell for appearing tonight to help make that possible. If you share in Town Hall's vision for a robust community engaged in the arts, science, and culture where everyone has a voice, please consider donating tonight or becoming a member. Town Hall is adding new events and podcasts every day. Upcoming programs include Senator Mazie Hirono talks with Viet Thanh Nguyen about her journey to become the first Asian American woman and the only immigrant serving in the United States Senate. Wayne Horowitz, Aisha Brooks, and Ha Yang Kim take the stage in our series with Earshot Jazz. And Kate Arnoff is joined by Bill McKibben to discuss how capitalism has ruined the planet and what we can do about it. You can check out more of what is upcoming by visiting our online calendar at townhallseattle.org. Tonight's conversation will be about 60 minutes, including Q&A. Questions will be selected from those in the chat field at the bottom of the video player, so please submit those at any time. You can also text questions to 206-504-2857 as noted in the chat. We cannot guarantee that we'll be able to address every question, but we will try to get to as many as possible. Please keep your questions concise and in the form of a question. For those who would like to view the program with closed captions, click the CC button in the bottom right corner of the video player. The program will be available for rewatching immediately following the event. Town Hall's work is made possible through your support and the support of our sponsors. Our Arts and Culture series is supported by For Culture, Arts Fund, Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, the Norcliffe Foundation, the Wyncote Foundation Northwest. Finally, Town Hall is a member-supported organization, so I'd like to thank all of our members watching tonight. One final note, you will want to dive deeper into tonight's conversation topic by purchasing a copy of Marlon's book. Please use the link in the chat below to buy through our partner bookseller, Estelida's Library. Marlon Peterson is the principal of the Precedential Group, a social justice consulting firm. He is host of the Decarcerated podcast, a senior Atlantic Fellow for Racial Equity, a member of the Aspen Global Leadership Network, and a 2015 recipient of the Soro Justice Fellowship. Ebony Magazine has named him one of America's 100 most influential and inspiring leaders in the Black community. His TED Talk, Am I Not Human? A Call for Criminal Justice Reform, has over 1 million views. His writing has appeared in Ebony, The Nation, USA Today, Color Lines, and more. Darnell Moore is a media maker, educator, writer, and thought leader with work focused on marginal identity, equity, and social justice. He is currently Director of Inclusion for Content and Marketing at Netflix. He has served as the co-managing editor at The Feminist Wire since 2010 and is also a writer in residence at the Center of African American Religion, Sexual Politics, and Social Justice at Columbia University. He is also a columnist at logotv.com and newnownnext.com, and a former editor-at-large at Cassius. A prolific writer, Darnell has been published in various media outlets, including The New York Times, MSNBC, The Guardian, Ebony, and Out Magazine, among others. Darnell is the author of the 2019 Lamba Literary Award-nominated memoir, No Ashes in the Fire, Coming of Age, Black and Free in America. Peterson's book, Bird Uncaged, an abolitionist freedom song, is the subject of this evening's talk. Please join me in welcoming Darnell Moore and Marlon Peterson.
Thank you so much for that introduction.
Likewise, thank you for that. It was wonderful.
Marlon, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm good. I feel good. I feel relaxed, a little nervous. I'm about to speak with you, but one day I'm happy to get to speak to you. So I'm not sure if things will come out, but I feel good, man. I feel good.
I am honored to be in conversation with you after having gone through your book and looked at drafts and just picking this one up. And I have mad notes in it. Let me show you the book, like just stickies all over the place. I'm so blessed that this man is my friend and my brother and someone who I can learn from. I just want to get started just by giving you some dap. Your book is lyrical, it's evenly paced, it's honest to the bone, it's tender, it's beautiful, it's humorous, it's wise, it's self-reflective. It's a story that sings, it shouts on occasion, it humanizes, it reveals your heart, your interiority, and that of your people, of your community. And it's an ode to grace and what is possible when we free our imaginations. The world, really, there are going to be people whose lives are going to be changed and saved literally because of the words that you wrote. And I just want to look, we got to give people their flowers. I give it to you all the time, but I'm doing it in a public space and give it to you now. So I want to start there.
Thank you, Ben.
And I also want to start by grounding us in this moment, right? So I'm certain that when you were writing this book, you didn't realize that it would come out during a pandemic. Hence, we're having a virtual conversation now through your book launch because we are all existing through a pandemic. And it was interesting to me thinking about your book because in so many ways what the pandemic has revealed are the extent to which we as human persons, wherever we might exist, have experienced disconnection from community in this moment, isolation, the pain that comes along with that. And in so many ways, the pandemic has become a cage for us, for a lot of us. So that's one thing. But then your book is coming out on the heels of the Derek Chauvin case, where we're reminded of George Floyd's murder. Right after the guilty charges are read, we find out that 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant is killed. So now we're wrestling in this cage with notions of justice and accountability. So I want to ask you, not knowing that your book would land in this moment, what do you think about the ways your book, even without you probably thinking about where it would land, it's already in conversation with this moment? How do you see it doing so?
Well, first of all, that introduction is is second to none. And thank you once again for being my friend for all these years. You've definitely helped me get through a lot and definitely helped me get through this book. So I'm just thankful to be able to be, that we can continue to talk about, do it like this as well as, as people who have accomplished things that we probably never thought we would. I think that here's the thing, that I knew that it would be relevant no matter what, right? And that I knew that, and we all know that police violence towards Black and brown bodies is a part of it's a part of the fabric of what happens here. It's just what happens here, right? And that's a sad thing to say. So I knew it would land in that place. I know that we are always, particularly now, where we're always struggling with these notions of what to do with, how can we address the folks that do the things that hurt us and harm us? And I knew it would be relevant to that because that's also something that's a part of what we do, yeah. Right? And I think the last part of it, it's sentimental in nature. A couple of days ago, someone sent a picture to me of a young boy. I don't know how young, he's definitely younger than me. He looked like in his 20s or teens on the New York City subway, reading the book, right? Just reading the book open. And the part of why they sent it to me also, because they found out that, the MTA, they was accusing him of trying to fair evade jump turnstile. He wasn't. It was a little, but the point is that somebody like him, I know the book would land on people like that person too, yes. Right? And I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful that for what it's worth that those of us, we get to keep creating these words while we're here,
Mm-hmm. And I should also note that your skin is popping. Marlon he got some new lighting or something. I don't know what's going on, but I'm over here wanting to go back and wash my face.
All right, okay,
go. One of the things, and this is a marker of your writing, not just in the book, but over the course of your writerly career. I've been so moved by the ways that you leave yourself wide open on the page. And you refuse to turn away the mirror from self. And that's not easy to do when writing a memoir, because there is this sort of way that memoir almost invites the writer to either become fully the heroic protagonist in the book, or on the opposite direction, maybe sort of like the antagonist. And what you do is you offer us a complex character, a complex being who might be a good person who's done bad shit. You are courageous enough to not hide, and you do this throughout the book. And that shit is not easy to do. Take it from somebody who's had to sit down and go, oh shit, if I share that, is that really putting myself out there? What will people think about me? And you've done it. Tell us about why that was important for you to render yourself that way on a page, to not be afraid of self-reflection, of self-reflexive analysis, of critique, but also not obliterating yourself in the process. Talk to us about that.
I wanted to write about real people and real life. And I've had a particular, type of experiences where I've seen the entire spectrum of, human possibilities, right? From the best of our possibilities to the worst of our possibilities. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody who was just on one end, not truly, right? And I know I'm one of those people who have not, who's never really lived on either end. And I think that's part of what it's hard for us to see, is that what other people do that are harmful and hurtful, even though we don't do it, we may choose not to do it, rightfully so, but we're so capable of it. Like there's a capability of it. And what I mean, and part of that capability is that we're all like impacted by different things in our lives that sort of, create options for us that may be great options, or may create options that aren't really options. And, and I think there's an incompletion to us that we don't want to sort of embrace. There's an incompletion to us that makes us beautiful, because there's an incompletion to us. And I think, sort of I call it like a Jesus complex. But like this, there's a perfection that is like it's what we should strive for. I'm not saying we shouldn't strive to be excellent. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's a perfection that doesn't really exist, and I think that's the beauty of it. And the harsh about it, and I wanted to in so many ways, I felt like, I don't even say I wanted, because I didn't know how much of this I was going to give out. Right? This book was an exploration for me also. It wasn't like I said, this is how it was going to end. Go through. And it just felt like that's where I needed to go. I felt like if I'm telling this story, I can't heal from a lot of stuff if I don't tell this story properly, right? I can't do it. I could walk out of this, and let's say I wrote something and, something was more dishonest than probably what I wrote. And I'm saying more dishonest than what I wrote, because I think there's always ways for us to sort of get to better truth of ourselves. But if I didn't dig deep, I think after it would have been done at some point, I would have felt dissatisfied with it.
For sure. I'm going to read some of the words off your page and ask you to read some and really go into the beauty of your craft. But I'm also, before I do that, before we get deep into the words, talk to us about the process. What was your writerly process? Who were you listening to? The songs that might have sort of inspired? What were you reading? Were you up 5 a.m, right? What was your process like?
I had the most excellent non-routine process. I know a lot of folks, when they say, well, I woke up at 5 a.m, I do this and I do that, or, I didn't
listen.
have.
I wake up at 5 a.m, I'll be like, I think I'm gonna go back to sleep.
Right? I get sleep time. Interrupting my sleep. So I didn't have that type of process of it. I mean, I'm thankful, I've developed this habit of being able to write in chunks, right? So I can sit down for a couple of days and write in chunks. And it's great, and it's not so great because it pushes me in these late night things, but just when it comes. But also, music was a huge part of this book in a sense. My writing process is that I have to have headphones and music playing in my ear. I can't. For me, I need to have music, and I need to have a rhythm. That's, the Black in me. I really need to be bopping my head while I write. And, some of those songs goes from Lauren to Jill, Scott to Jade to Bob Marley. I mean, to Soca song. And I think that came out.
It did.
And I didn't know that. And not until after, when I got feedback, and I was like, oh, wow, it did kind of come out this way.
It did. Let me see if I can find this one example. But there is it's so rhythmic. maybe is this it here? Yeah, like this passage is page 11. Um, she eventually healed, at least physically, I think. Who knew? I never asked her, nor was I aware that there was more than one way to suffer pain. Her cast was tagged up with the names of all her friends, and she eventually walked regular. She was good. She moved on. I was good. We moved on. Another neighbor was killed. 2 floors up from us. We were good. We moved on. An older teen was shot in the head while talking on a payphone on the corner of Nostrand and Pacific, a clear view from our living room window. Too bad for him and his family, but we were good. We moved on. Gunshots rang from the street often. As long as we followed the protocols we were taught, take off the lights, get low to the ground, and stay away from the blasted window. We would continue watching television without interruption. We were good. We moved on. Now, that is lyrical. Like, I literally was like, oh shit, this is like, all I need is a beat, and I'm about to go in. So I love that the cadence of the writing, the sort of feel of the writing is so much influenced by the backdrop of the musicality that's in the sonic backdrop of your life. I think that's so dope. But speaking of your words, I want to read some other words. And I literally wrote a note for myself. These words are literally going to save someone. People who have been harmed by sexual assault, and people who also have been perpetrators of sexual assault. So I'm going to read a bit, and then for those for who might be on the call, for whom talk of sexual assault and rape could be triggering and raise memories for you, I would just want to let you know I'll be reading about it. You can feel free to mute this part if you like, if you need that for yourself. I also wrote here the words gutted me. The one bright spot about this, I'm reading on page 28, and then I'm going to skip to 29, and I'm going to skip again. The one bright spot about this incident was that after my mother found out, she told Mike. When it was dismissal time, Mike was standing at the front of the school with a team of older boys waiting to find the boys who'd hurt me and retaliate. Though they never found them, it was the first time I felt like my brother cared about me. He came to fight for me. That is how I defined love back then. Several weeks later, I was raped at gunpoint. Jehovah didn't show up for me. End of chapter. You start the next chapter by writing, the first time I decided that Dash would be your name. I was in my mid-30s and was at a funeral for a 19-year-old boy who was shot to death, the same age I went to prison. Let me tell you about my Dash, our Dash, because we are not well, and there is no cage, our religion, our God in the heavens, on earth, or in your mind who can protect you from broken human beings. I'm going to now skip to page 49. And I wish I could read all of this for you all, but I won't. I'll stop where I feel like the sort of moment says to, but you're writing to Dash, dear Dash, who is, this is the term that you take up for the person that sexually assaulted you. Dear Dash, everyone has a Dash, even you. You are the only person who could make me jump out of sleep, the only person who could cause my body to jolt at random times when you leaped from my subconscious to my conscious. I wonder if you ever think about me. Do you ever get the same jolt as me? Do you ever wonder what happened to me after we met? Do you wonder if I ever told anyone about you? Do you ever wonder if and how you impacted my life? I wonder if you ever thought about how your past experiences perverted how you saw me when we met. What was your childhood like? Why did you take my childhood away from me? Did someone take yours? You're a part of my Dash. You're an indelible part of my life that has shaped the way I walk in the world. Ironically, the first time I decided to give you the name Dash was at the funeral of a young man I knew who was murdered at 19, the same age I was when I went to prison. The eulogist spoke about the dash on a tombstone, the day of birth to the day of your death. The speaker used the reference of the dash to ask the audience of young mourners to consider what they will have accomplished during that dash, what they be remembered for. I understood the analogy differently. The young man who died was a participant in an alternatives to incarceration program that I worked for at the time. He was a Crip, and so were most of the young people in the funeral home that day. The room was filled with teenage boys in jeans, sneakers, button-down shirts, church shirts, and dark shades to hide the sweat coming from their eyes. The girls were in their church dresses, and others were in their best house party outfits. All of them were crying, sobbing, punching their fists into their hands, gasping, whisperingly cussing to themselves, hurting. I wondered to myself about our young folks who are out here dying and fighting and surviving in gangs and on street corners. What happened to them in their lives that could have led them to become walking, hurt people who hurt other people? What led me? What was that dash? I didn't wonder what legacy we would leave behind. I wondered, what was their trauma? Who was responsible for it? What happened to us who were all innocent one, all cute and cuddly babies? The dash, I felt then, is a cumulative trauma that shapes us from intimacy. Who or what was part of your dash? And let me just say this. Your ability to, even as you are writing, asking of your dash, the questions of how they came to hurt you, you're also considering their humanity. That is what I mean by literally writing grace on the page. And it is so much, I think, a part of your politic, a part of you saying, abolition isn't a one-sided work. It only is to be applied to me. And what I mean by that, this idea of obliterating the cage, also you're applying it to a person that harmed you. One, I just want to hold space for that. That is going to save somebody. It will ultimately, I think, possibly keep somebody from hurting somebody else, or allowing someone to seek accountability. I just want to invite you to talk about that. And I'll also say, when I was writing my memoir, I chose not to write about the sexual assault I experienced because I did not yet have the words or wasn't strong enough to even have it on the page as a Black man trying to write freedom, my own freedom into being, and that of the person who did this. So I want to thank you for the courage that you employed to do that work. So if you're okay, talk about the process of writing that, what you're thinking, and how you got to this place to begin to think about accountability and a humanistic approach to transformative justice in that way.
So without question, that chapter was definitely the most difficult chapter to write. And you know, I spent a huge portion of my life, Darnell, like hating that person, right? And it wasn't like always a conscious hate. It was just like I knew like that affected me, right? People would often ask, or still do, right? Like, what made you go to prison, or why did you do that? And I always say that there was definitely an instant offense that I also speak about candidly in my, accountability and role there and culpability. And I also realized that it was like, there was so many things that were happening like in my life, and the sexual assault was a major flashpoint. And I, for one, just like how you read the previous chapter about paragraph about moving on, like we moved on, like I wrote it one also because, the way trauma, the way I experienced it, and I'm sure, other people can speak to it too, but the way I experienced trauma was like, you got it, but you got to deal with the next thing. And I wanted people to sort of realize that it wasn't this process we sat back and I thought and things, and oftentimes that's not what it is. And I also realized that, like, I spent my time, I spent a good portion of my life. I grew up around people who everyone hates, right? And who I hated, who I thought I would hate because of, and I couldn't deny their whole humanity. Like I was around it. I always say I learned about humanity by being with people in there. There were some of the most beautiful people. And like, I knew they hurt people. I know we hurt people, but I also know we were capable of doing other things. I see that. I can't ignore that. Before I left prison, I always used to tell folks, I'm gonna tell the truth, right? And there's many parts of that truth that, we all have about that experience. And one of the truths I wanted to show is that, is that I grapple with me and my own guilt, but I also grapple with, how can I spend a good part of my time inside helping folks, the people who, there's a hierarchy, in terms of what people accept as good crime or what have you, good harm, and when it comes to jail and prison, and we have that hierarchy inside. And I would have men who did some horrific things and they would know it. And I would also see another part, because they would come to me and be wrong with me and talk to me about things. And I couldn't be one of those people that would be like, now I'll message you and call them some sort of profane term or some sort of derogatory term, as we would do. It's instinctively what we do. I saw them, and I couldn't ignore that. I couldn't unsee what I saw. So in this chapter here, for that person, I knew I had to figure out a way to see him, to make me see. I knew it was why was he different? Because he did it to me. He did it to me, but it doesn't mean these people did to other people. I can see them. So how can I not see him? And it was a grappling for me. It was hard for me. It was hard for me to do that. And and so when I think about the young boy, he was the brother who was killed when he was 19. He was a complicated brother. He was he was a child. He was like me, he was a kid, and his friends saw him. That's why I described his friends and how they were there. They were being who they are, right? They, they trying to hide their tears, they wearing their clothes, whatever. But they saw him. And if I want to care about these young folks, if I say I care about doing work for young people, I want to empower young people, I got to see what they're able to see in that person too.
Yeah. I love that. And seeing someone doesn't negate accountability. It doesn't. It could, and I want to make sure that people understand that. One of the things that I really became clear to me while reading is Marlon's a preacher. And in so many ways though, you were deep in Jehovah. You was a Jehovah Witness down, right? But you left that sort of old faith behind and picked up a new faith, and that new faith was almost this yearning for justice, a yearning to unlearn all the old truths that you had hold on to. Writing became part of your faith practice. Can you read for us the letter you wrote to Nadia Lopez's students on page 123 while you were incarcerated, that it almost became a pivotal moment in your life in that process that really sparked something in you? And I also think, from what you describe in a book, allowed you to see writing as an avenue for not only communication, but for transformation. Can you read us that letter and then talk about the role of writing as almost salvific in your life?
Dear Miss Lopez's class, before I introduce yourself, I want you all to appreciate how much of a caring teacher you are blessed to have in Miss Lopez. What she is doing by reaching out to me goes far beyond her paycheck. She's one of those teachers that you'll remember years from now, believe me. My name is Marlon Peterson. I'm 25 years of age, born and raised in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, and a proud descendant. I'm in Brooklyn right now, that's Brooklyn, on cue, on cue. And a proud descendant of Trinidadian parentage. The youngest of 3 children, I grew up with the innate need to always fit in. I was the valedictorian of my elementary school in the 6th grade. I wrote for the Fort Greene News at the age of 11 in a program sponsored by Spike Lee and Nike. I also wrote for my junior high school newspaper. At 15, I was granted an internship at the New York City Opera while also taking journalism classes at my high school, Martin Luther King Junior High School. I barely graduated from high school on time. Went to New York City Technical School, then made some news again at the age of 19, 12 days before my 20th birthday. In October 1999, I made international news in connection with attempted robbery and double homicide in Manhattan. 5.5 years later, you hear from me behind bars. How did this happen? I was into my arrest. My lawyer told me that I was facing first-degree murder with a minimum of 25 years to life in prison. As I sat on the floor in central booking, smelling mixtures of human waste and vomit, I tearfully asked myself that same question. How did this happen? In the weeks thereafter, my father almost died. My mother and sister were walking zombies. My brother delirious, and my 11-year-old nephew was without his best friend, uncle, big brother. How did this happen? How did I, a nerdy little kid dressing up in suits and ties, knocking on doors, preaching Watchtower and Awake, end up in the very place I thought and everyone else thought I would never end up? You know, I got a cousin who was a Crip and a close friend that I earned a scar for when I was home. And I used to try my best to keep them on the straight and narrow, discouraging them from the lifestyle they were living. They never served more than a few weeks in jail. While not wishing that they were ever caught in my situation, I couldn't help to wonder, how is it I'm mentoring these brothers to stay away from the nonsense, and here I am putting butter on my lips because the commissary doesn't have lotion. Initially, I was able to find that answer to that question, at least partially. The first part of that answer can be summed up in 2 quotes. Do not be misled. Bad associations spoil useful habits. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. You got me smirking. And quote, he that is having dealings with wise persons will become wise, but he that is having dealings with stupid ones will fare badly. End quote. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20. The other part of the answer took me a couple of weeks to answer. In one sentence, in life, you do not get to choose your consequences. Interestingly, I still at times have to reconvince myself of the answers because prison life requires that you constantly reiterate things like this to yourself because insanity is always a step away. Until next time, love and guidance. P.S. I am on the gate waiting to hear from y'all, so don't take too long. I'll tell you a little bit more about me, my experiences and observations next time. Make sure you ask me a lot of questions. Being able to communicate with you all is both a joy and a blessing to me and the other brothers in here that I talk to about you all. You all help me maintain my sanity.
Tell us about how that writing correspondence between them literally did that. How did it save you?
Literally, I mean, you know, this starts with Dr. Lopez, right? And Nadia Lopez, who's a friend of both of ours, and a dear friend of mine, a sister friend of mine. And like the genesis is like, we grew up in the same neighborhood, and she reached out to me years later and with this, you know, opportunity to write to these kids, her students at the time, middle school students. And, I spoke about it in the letter, the eventual letter also that I wrote to them, a subsequent letter that, like, I didn't think that, I was kind of like, why would she ask me? Like, why would you ask me? Like, I ain't got nothing to offer y'all. Like, you know, I'm here, I'm in prison. You know what I'm here for? Like, why would you ask me to offer something? I have nothing to offer. Like, look what I did. Or look what I was a part of. And so obviously self-esteem was definitely very low and drowning in self-guilt. But like that opportunity to write to those young people, once again, going to how, you know, being able to see young people, like writing to those young folks helped me open up about things. Now, I didn't open up to those things to them, but just like, it was okay for me to like, it was okay for me that things that happened to accept that things that happened to me were wrong. Right? To be like, some of these things that happened were wrong, right? And they helped me see that through their vulnerability, you know, in terms of reaching out to me. And that completely changed my trajectory because part of what also came with that was that I learned through, you know, the material that Dr. Lopez was saying, I learned how to create curriculum. And through that, you know, that ended up leading me to like running programs inside the prison and starting a youth program and bringing the youth program out and writing that same and using some of the same curriculum literally that I brought to the youth program. I mean, got youth in prison to work with college students, right? Yes. I mean, it changed my complete trajectory for life. And for that, I'm like forever like thankful for them, for those young folks. And it's funny, just last year, I reconnected with one of them. And she's a doctorate, you know, she's a PhD, you know, and she, you know, she spoke to like how that impacted her, that opportunity, you know. I always say I gained life from that. I did not see writing. I didn't fully understand the power of it. Like I loved it, I liked it, I had did it before, but I didn't. I didn't see what the power of it was,
Mm.
you know, and then I didn't see that I had like, that I could, I think it's the first time I really started realizing I could pour myself into this and allow other people to see it.
Love. I want to invite folk. I have about 1.5 more questions. I want to invite you all to post your questions because we'll love for Marlon to respond to them. But I want to read this short part that I think is such a powerful way to think about the violence of jails. It's on page 79, and you say, jails are designed to disorient. Your relationship to time, space, and diet alerts alters dramatically. Time is replaced with waiting until the until the count is cleared, until the bus gets here, until you hear your name or jail number called, 34999222147, until they open your cell, until they close your cell, until the food gets here, until you can shower, until as a new index of time was the hardest thing for me to adjust to. Wow. I was like, okay, I get it now. That is, you're almost in a suspended state. How does that then impact your vision for what are your freedom dream for what redress and harm ought to look like?
Yeah. I don't think those experiences, like the way I just described like that experience with prison, one can argue that like there's a level of paucity, there's a pause that's happening. You have the opportunity to reflect and learn from and learn from your experiences, right? And in that reflection, there's some accountability, because the idea is that you would reflect in a way that you would not, continue that sort of harm. You would deal with your behavior. The thing I'm saying is that there's other way. The way that incarceration sort of like ostensibly is supposed to, create this level of solitude to create, penitence, as it were. There is no, like, there's no intention, there's no purpose in anything that you're going through, right? In that moment, you had the whims of people and this sort of like relationship with like not understanding what time is. And I think what it does for folks, honestly, Darnell, I'm beating around going to places. I think post-incarceration, I can speak to that, what that does, and what it also has done for me in various ways, is that I think it has created this mentality for me where I have to try to do everything I can right now, because I don't know when it's going to end. When it's, and in some ways that has helped me when I've been home, and since I've been home, because I've been able to, be a part of a lot of things. But I think that it prevents you from sort of like being present and being fully immersed in what is it you want to do and having plans and goals. There's no direction in that. And I think it's when we think about the amount of people in this era who has gone through incarceration, for whatever, I'm just speaking about as a human society, particularly in American society, where, we're the best at that in the world. There's an American exceptionalism to that. Like, how is that shaping, reshaping our society right now? Because like right now, see there's 70 million people in America with a criminal conviction who are not in jail. There's 70 million people who, like me, living amongst us. And that's a tremendous power in that as well. I almost want we bring tremendous power to it and resilience to it and brilliance to it. But also there's a damage there that I don't fully know we have gotten to. You know what I mean? And I mean, in those moments there, when there's a suspension of time, I mean, somebody say like it's not as bad as being in a box, being in solitary confinement or what have you. And it's just it's a gradation of it. It's a gradation of it, and I remember, like even in this piece here, like I can reflect on what that was like. I see it, like I see when those moments happen, and what that did to people. It sent people mad. Like, I mean, it sent people into so many different places because they had no idea of what was happening.
Yes. We got some questions from our virtual audience. First one is, what were some of the biggest obstacles you faced and have seen others face in the effort to continue to grow and improve while imprisoned, literally in a cage?
Oh, they're doing it upstream. I always, when I write about it in the book too, like, the things that I was able to be a part of with a lot of great people, we had to fight to do those things. Like, we got in trouble for those things to try to help folks inside or to try to get information inside. And while, and I think that's one of the biggest struggles that is there, while there's, what they said, there's always an officer or a teacher or, somebody, a person in school, in the facility who's a person that like tries to do stuff, see people as full humans. And they're usually trying to watch their back also to not be harmed, not to be, censored any sort of way. So I'm just saying, like, it part of it, like the institution of it hindered the type of growth that is like parallel with where society is at right now. The other part of it, the other challenge is that, I always say the aesthetic of incarceration, the aesthetic of it and what we know of it, right? And I'll make this real to folks. We all laugh at jail jokes. We have all done it. We all do it. Don't go to jail, you know what's gonna happen. And, we all make these sort of, these jokes. And I'm not here to judge on it, right? I've laughed at them too. I'm not here to judge it. But what I'm saying is that there's a cognitive, we understand the type of harm that people will experience in that place or possibility. We understand that we have this cognitive, this is what we make jokes about it because it's not our friend, family, etc. But we know that's possible, that can happen in there. And so for the people who are going into that place, where those things are very real, first, their psyche is already conditioned to be like, this will happen. But those things are really happening. So you think about like how, in terms of survival and thriving, like most of your time, you're trying to figure out how to survive the situation. And that just hinders human development, period.
What is a book that stuck with you when you were younger in a way that your book will stick with others today?
Wow.
Love that question.
Yeah. When I was younger, I'm assuming you're talking about before, the jail, that experience. It's a book I read. I don't know how I came up. So the Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man, right? That's by James Weldon Johnson. And I remember being like third, second grade, just the type of kid I was. I went to the library and I had no idea who he was. I didn't know what, I just saw the Ex-Colored Man and Autobiography, and it just, it just intrigued me, right? And that book stuck with me, even as a little kid reading that, maybe in the third or fourth grade on my own. I think it's like, delving into like race in the country, right? Even as a young kid, like, it's something about that, attracted me, intrigued me. So yeah, that's still with me. And I don't know if I'm right. I'm not saying I'm writing a book like James Weldon Johnson. I didn't say I wrote a book on that level. Just because I'm not, I'm saying that stood with me. I hope my book, I don't want to say I hope. I really do feel like there is, you said it, but I feel I wanted to write something that I knew would touch people's souls. Like I wanted that. And because the issues that we have, as people in this country, as Black folks, brown folks, the issues that we have in this country here, it like, it's bigger than the rhetoric. It's bigger than the statistics. It's bigger than our policy platforms, right? These like, and this is what it is. I wanted people to understand, like, this is what is really happening here. So here's the thing, like we think about, abolition, closing prison, et cetera. Land where you decide you want to land. I'm not about religiosity with anything, right? Land where you're going to land, but just be aware that this is what it is. This is what's happening, and make a decision on that. I'm saying that like I want us to wrestle with. I want us to see it on our face.
Well, I will say that this is a book that rivals any of the great. It's a great book. You achieve that. It's a great book. It is. I've not read this story before grounded in an analysis that isn't overly didactic and preachy and in your face. You use narrative to really help us understand the soul of a thing. And it's beautifully done. You achieved what you set out to do. Another question, can you talk a bit about your organization, the Presidential Group? How did it come about, and what are some examples of the work that it does?
So it's consultancy in the criminal legal space, social justice space. And the way it came about, I mean, I was, so we started in 2015. And, I resigned from my job at the time. They were, I just felt like it was time to move on. I took a risk, a leap. And I left, and I was, 5 years out of jail, just got off of parole after 5 years on parole. And I felt like it was an opportunity to do other things. And I took the leap. So anyway, in terms of examples, like I've worked, I think we worked on kind of the thing I wanted to, we worked together. Even Darnell was one of the first times with Kim Crenshaw and that whole project around my brother's keeper and
Yes.
and equity in it, and we helped inform and help move these things forward. And so that's the type of work we have done, and it sort of also in some ways has potential to expand into. I've been able to do a bit of moving around in terms of traveling in other parts of the world and visiting places that have, people just like us on other places.
Marlon is being very humble, y'all, right now. But like everything from really being on the stages of like TED Talk and really helping to frame abolitionism and restorative and transformative justice in humanistic ways, traveling around the world, whether that is South Africa or in our local communities, working with groups. He's also been co-founder of organizations and nonprofits. He's being humble. But really everything he does, all of the energy that he has, he directs that towards reshaping the narrative around what justice can look like, and offering ideas and solutions for how to execute that. I have a question for you. Oh, we have one more question. Wait, another question coming in before mine. I'll end with mine. A lot of people are new to activism. What would you say are some of the most effective forms of protest in today's world?
Whatever you got. No. You see what folks are doing. You see what folks are doing, right? Protesting is addressing the issue that is at hand. And there are various ways, there's principles to organizing that people follow, and there's strategy to it. I'm not gonna highlight one, different types. They exist. We see them. We have them before us. I think the one thing I want to address real quick is that the title activist, right, is not a title I had I didn't know. I thought that it was not something I wanted to I put up there and say I'm an activist.
Sure.
And I'm not knocking that. This is not a critique on that. It's really just saying that the things I've been able to part of is that I saw things were happening, and I got involved, and I collaborated with folks and people, and I was able to help and support and do whatever I can, and that was part of, and a lot of that included protests as well. So yeah, that's how I answer that question.
One of the things I'll add is there's this idea that transformation comes as a result of, say, protests, i.e. putting our bodies on the street if we can, disruptive practices, being out there, holding signs. That is one type of work, right? That's one way that we can do the work. I often think, though, that the work that we're called to do in a moment like this is to, here's a metaphor, I guess a metaphor I like to use. It's easy to name the feet that are on our necks and then to respond to that, to protest against it. It's harder to name the necks that our feet are on. Mm-hmm. I think the real work is, if there's going to be a protest, maybe the protest starts in the mirror and asking ourselves, how might we be complicit in the oppression of others? How might we, by virtue of who we are in the world, the communities that we live in, our identities, have access points to resources, to safety, to life that other people don't? How might my feet be on somebody's neck, and what the hell am I going to do to take it off? That work is more profound than being out on the street with a sign, trust me. Because that type of work leads to a type of internal transformation that moves you to be an accomplice in a struggle for justice for other people. And guess where it starts? With self. I want to have you speak to this question. Maybe this is where we end. Healing is not like a destination, like it is a journey. But how has the book catalyzed your healing?
One has had me acknowledge things that I had never acknowledged. The first chapter is called Hiding, and for me, like I didn't know what I was going to talk about in that chapter, but I knew I knew there were things that there were cages that held me back, right? And I wanted to also to sort of discover like how do those things come up in relation to my family and my community, right? Because it wasn't just about me. The chapters, part that you read is about my community. These things were happening in my community, and I wanted to sort of like interrogate that. So I wanted to admit to some things. I realized that there were nuances of my experiences that I was holding out, even in my work. And that was good for me. That made me better at things, right? And then also, in a healthy way, sometimes it was unhealthy, to be quite honest. That I realized I had to go to places that I would normally avoid going to. Right? And I needed to do so. And I did things a little different. I needed to do this a little bit different. Right? And also part of it was that if you read the book, there's music in there and there's dancing and like that was it too. Like music and dancing is a part of it. Like I played steel pan in the period of me writing this book also, right? And that's good for me. That's healthy. That's joy. That's fun. That's peace for me, and that was a part of the healing. So that's why I had to be here. That's why I had to talk about, like, when I was in jail, I had my club nights, yes, in my cell, right? And then lastly, it was like a huge acknowledgement of the love that my family gave to me. Because this is a healing process for us.
Yeah, I'm talking. And how has your family responded?
They are, they're proud, and they invested in me. And I don't mean invested, I don't mean financially, because I wasn't there, but I mean more so like those years I was away and even the years I came home, like they invested in helping me get back together, get whole again. And they didn't understand what we didn't go through family counseling, those sort of things. And I would suggest people do, yes, right? But I'm saying that like, they took care of me. And, even and I felt like, in the back of the book is like a huge shout out. It's like you tell as Brooklyn as I can get, right? I shout out everybody in there. But, there are people in that book who didn't know I was shouting them out in that book because because they took care of me. People inside there, people who literally took care of me, Darnell. And that is the healing process through the book. But I wanted to also show that these people took care of me. Like any feat I get, I'm thankful for what I'm able to do. I have gifts and I've been able to hone certain things. But like that's an us thing. Like yes, we got here to, you all brought me here.
In 60 seconds, and then we'll close before I do a little toast. But in 60 seconds, if you had to talk back to little Marlon, to 19-year-old Marlon, what would you say to him today? Like, talk back to little Marlon. What message would you give him? What word of encouragement? 60-second pitch speech would you give him?
This is 19-year-old Marlon. Marlon, you are so close to stepping into where you need to be. You're so close. I see it. Like you're so close to it, Marlon. Don't be so hard on yourself.
Mm.
Don't be so hard on yourself, Marlon, because everybody everybody around you is really pushing for you, and they see something.
Mm.
You just got to see it, though. You got to like just take a step, just pause a little bit, and probably I would tell him to have a conversation with your parents and your sister and your brother about what's happening to you.
Well, brother, I could not be more happy, proud, blessed even to have you as a friend, to have you as somebody I learned from, and now to have your book in the world. This life-changing, beautiful book. So I did prepare a cocktail in advance. Well, it's not really a cocktail, it's just straight whiskey. Sorry for the non-drinkers. But cheers to you.
Cheers.
Cheers to you. And all of you who tuned in, thank you so much for spending this evening with us. And for all of the folk that organized this, thank you for giving us this opportunity to chat with Marlon. Thanks.
Thank you, Darnell. Thank you. I love you, bro.
Love you too. I love you too.
So on behalf of Town Hall, I want to thank you both as well. Thanks for presenting on our stage and for bringing your stories. It's been so awesome to listen to you. And somebody in the chat said it's been a deeply stirring conversation, thought-provoking, action-provoking. So thank you so much for your time and for your work. I want to encourage everyone watching to purchase a copy of Bird Uncaged through Estelita's library. The link for that is in the chat just below the video player. And you know, if at a point in the future we're able to host you again, I think that would be so great, and I hope that we can do that. But in the immediate future, Marlon, good luck on the rest of your book tour, and I hope that you both have a great night.